I moved to the apartment on the edge of town because it was cheap. Too cheap. Really, for a place with 2 bedrooms, a decent kitchen, and a view of the woods, the landlord, a witty man named Mr. Hensley, had seemed too eager to rent it out. His hands were fidgeting when he handed me the keys. "It's quiet," he said, his voice thin. "You'll like the quiet. Just don't mind the walls." I didn't ask what he meant. I was desperate. New city, new job, no savings, and the apartment was a steal. The walls were fine anyway, off-white, a little scuffed, but nothing unusual. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked, set up my desk, and tried to settle in. The quiet was nice, like Mr. Hensley said, but it wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. It started on the fourth night. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone, when I felt it, a prickle, on the back of my neck, like someone was watching me. I sat up, my heart thumping, and I scanned the room. Nothing, just shadows. The faint glow of streetlights through the blinds. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. A new place, new sounds, or lack thereof. I just turned off the lights and tried to sleep. But the feeling didn't go away. It grew stronger, like the weight on my chest, like eyes boring into me from every corner. The next morning, I noticed something odd. The walls in the living room seemed closer. Not by much, just an inch or two, but enough to make the room feel smaller. I measured it with tape, but the numbers were the same as when I moved in. I laughed it off. Stress, I told myself. My mind's playing tricks. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. From room to room, a constant, invisible pressure. That night, I woke to the sound of a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood. It was coming from the walls. I sat up, my breath shallow, and I listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was slow, desperate, like someone or something was trying to get my attention. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I pointed it at the walls, but there was nothing, just scuffed paint and shadows. The tapping stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. It felt alive, like it was listening. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I called Mr. Hensley. "The walls," I said, my voice shaking. "There's something wrong with them." He was quiet for a long time. Then, in that thin, nervous voice, he said, "Don't mind the walls. They're old. They settle. Just don't look too closely." I hung up, my stomach curdling. Don't look too closely. What did that mean? I spent the day staring at the walls, searching for something, anything to explain the tapping. The feeling of being watched. I found nothing. But the more I looked, the more the walls seemed to shift. not physically, but in my mind. The scuffs looked like patterns, like scrapes. The eyes I blinked, and they were gone. But the feeling remained. That night, the tapping returned, louder now, more insistent. It came from every wall, surrounding me, trapping me. I shouted, "Stop it!" But my voice sounded small, shallowed by the sound of silence. The tapping paused, and it started again, faster, almost mocking. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and slammed it against the wall, desperate to make it stop. The plaster cracked, revealing nothing but wood and dust. The tapping continued, louder, angrier. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I noticed something new. The crack in the wall was gone, but the scuffs, the ones I had thought looked like eyes, were cleaner, now more defined. They weren't just scuffs, they were shapes, faint and blurry, but unmistakably human. Human faces, pressed against the surface, their features stretched and distorted. I stumbled back, my heart racing, but when I looked again, they were gone. Just scuffs, just paint. I called Mr. Hensley again, but he didn't answer. I left a voicemail, my voice frantic. "There's something in the walls. Faces, eyes. You have to do something." He didn't call back that night. The tapping returned, but it wasn't just tapping anymore. It was scratching like the nails clawing at the plaster, trying to get out. I sat in the middle of the living room, my knees pulled to my chest, my flashlight trembling in my hands. The walls seemed to be getting closer and closer again. The air thinner and thicker. I could feel them, the eyes, the faces, watching me, pressing me against the walls, their pressure suffocating. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point I noticed something new. The shadows on the walls weren't moving with the light. They stayed fixed, dark and heavy, like holes. I shone the flashlight at one of them. It seemed to deepen, to stretch, like a tunnel, and then I saw it, a head, pale and thin, reaching out from the shadow, its fingers curling to me. I screamed and threw the flashlight, shattering it against the wall. The room plunged into darkness, but the scratching didn't stop. It grew louder, more frantic, and I could hear something else now, a whisper, faint and garbled, like voices trapped behind the plaster. They were saying my name. I don't remember much after that. I woke up on the floor, the room bright with morning light. The walls looked normal, scuffed off-white, unremarkable. The crack was gone, the shadows were gone, the faces were gone. But the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. It followed me everywhere, even outside of the apartment. I could feel it in the streets, in the grocery stores, in my car, eyes everywhere, watching, waiting. I moved out the next day, but it didn't help. The feeling followed me to my new place. It was a cheap motel on the other side of town. The walls were different, beige, not white, but the scuffs were the same. The tapping started again, then the scratching, then the whispers. I saw the faces again, pressed against the surface, their eyes wide and unblinking. I saw the hands reaching, grasping, pulling. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I can't escape it. The eyes are everywhere, in the walls, in the shadows, in the reflections. I tried to tell the people, but no one believes me. They say I'm stressed, that all I need is help, but I know it's real. The walls aren't just walls. They're watching, they're waiting, and they're getting closer. If you're hearing this and you feel that prickle on the back of your neck, don't wait, and that weight on your chest, don't ignore it. Don't look at the walls, because once they see you, they never let go. And the worst part, they're not out there, they're inside you.